Emily, your grandmother is no longer with us." Hearing those words, the phone dropped from my hand. I sat quietly in the corner of my apartment in Seattle, as if someone had taken my breath away. Grandma, my closest, wisest, and dearest person, was now just a memory. Grandma Clara Mitchell, whose every word had a lesson, who had filled my childhood with stories and affection, was no longer in this world. I somehow gathered myself together and caught the next flight, to that small town in New Jersey, where my grandmother's house stood. The same house where I had spent the happiest summers of my childhood. When I arrived, the house was empty, and so was my soul. But there, I found something, an envelope, placed in an old wardrobe in Grandma's room. It had just my name on it, Emily. My hands were trembling, and my heart was racing. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. "My dear child. If you are reading this letter, it means that I am no longer in this world. But I have one last gift for you. The house in which you created your most precious memories is now yours. This house is now yours, my child. Yours, Clara." The letter fell from my hands. On one side, there was the pain of losing Grandma, and on the other, the emotional realization of her precious gift. This house was not just a property, it was my roots, my identity. Right then and there, I made a decision: I would live in this house again. This would be my beginning. This would be my world. The next day, I went to see the house properly. Every corner, every door, every picture, it was as if Grandma's spirit still resided there. Her favorite tea kettle was still there. The old family photos hung on the walls. But there was something strange, an eerie restlessness in the house, as if a mystery was hidden within the walls. That night, when I opened Grandma's room, the cold breeze coming through the crack in the window sent a shiver down my spine. And there, by the bed, was another piece of paper. It had only 3 words written on it: "Be careful, Emily." I was terrified. Who had written this? Where did this second letter come from after Grandma's letter? Was this truly a warning? Or just my imagination? Questions swirled in my mind, but one thing was crystal clear: this house was not just bricks and walls, there was a deep secret buried here. The next morning, when I went to meet the local law firm, an old employee there looked at me and said, "You're Clara Mitchell's granddaughter. She left some documents for you." The file was handed to me, but before that, he said something that sent chills down my spine. "Miss Emily, you do know, right, that this house was never just a house?" I shook my head, but inside, I was shattered. Was Grandma hiding something? Was there a family secret about to be revealed to me? On the way back, I kept thinking. If the house was mine, did I now have to protect it? And the biggest question, was this house really still mine? My life, which until now had seemed like a straight line, had now become a maze. This was just the beginning. As the soft rays of the sun filtered through the old window panes, the atmosphere of that morning felt special. A new hope, a new life. My grandmother Clara's last memento was about to become the beginning of my life. I picked up a mug of tea and took one more look around the house. The walls were still filled with her fragrance. There was an unusual sense of peace, as if my grandmother was still with me. But this peace didn't last long. I thought I should check some important papers in the old drawer downstairs. But there was nothing, it was all empty. It was strange, Grandma always kept all the documents in order, especially the papers for the house. I thought, maybe they were with the law firm. Just then, I heard footsteps outside. I peeked through the window and saw, an SUV had stopped in front of my house. A woman got out, with a little boy and a man. They started walking towards my gate. I opened the door and asked, "Excuse me, who are you?" The woman was startled. But then she spoke in a harsh tone, "I should be asking you that, who are you? This is our house." I froze. "Your house?" I asked in shock. This is Clara Mitchell's house, and now it's mine. I'm her granddaughter Emily. The man stepped forward, a little nervously, and said, "Ma'am, we bought this house 2 months ago. Here's our sale agreement." He waved the documents in front of me. My feet felt as if they were glued to the ground. What? Are you joking?" My voice trembled. The woman replied, "We're sorry, but we bought this house from the Mitchell family, through an agent. The papers are completely legal." I took the papers from her without saying anything, and as I read through them, my heartbeat grew faster. The seller's name was written as Catherine Mitchell, my own mother. My mom. I whispered under my breath. Tears welled up in my eyes. Grandma's letter, her promise, everything seemed like a lie in that moment. Without saying another word, I stepped back inside. I looked at the walls, and then at myself. Was this really the house Grandma had left to me? Did Mom really sell this house without telling me? I immediately called my mother. "Hello?" Her voice was calm, as if nothing had happened. "Did you sell Grandma's house?" I asked directly. There was a few seconds of silence. Then came a cold voice, "Emily, you didn't need that house. Your career, your life, they're all in Seattle. That house became a burden for us." A burden? Mom, that was Grandma's last memory. She willed that house to me. "Did you read the whole will?" Mom said with a sarcastic tone. I fell silent. "Emily, sometimes the truth isn't what's written, it's what's hidden." The call ended. I was broken, but there was also anger inside me. Not only had my mother ignored Grandma's wishes, but she had also deceived me. As I stepped out of the house, I saw that new family. They had already gone inside. Now, it was their house, at least on paper. But one thing was clear in my heart, this story wasn't over. I called the law firm. "We need to meet," I said firmly. "I need to read every word of Clara Mitchell's will, and I need to do it now." The reply came, "Get ready, Miss Emily, what you're about to find out might change your life." I hung up the phone. There were no more tears in my eyes, now, only questions remained. What had Grandma hidden? And what had my mother concealed? Behind the walls of this house, there was not just memories, there was a truth that had begun to breathe. And now, this was my fight. The cold air of Seattle numbed my fingers, but a fire was burning inside me, questions, betrayal, and the need to know the truth. I stood at the door of the law firm where Grandma Clara had filed her will. The same will she had referred to in the letter she left me, saying, "To you," and the same will that my own family had used to strip me of my rights. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Miss Emily Mitchell." The receptionist looked up. "Yes," I replied in a soft but firm tone. "I have an appointment with Mr. Graham." Within moments, I was led into a cabin behind a heavy wooden door. Mr. Graham, an elderly, serious lawyer, didn't smile as he looked at me over his round glasses. He just nodded and slid a file across the table toward me. "Miss Mitchell, this is the official copy of your grandmother's will. It was last updated 6 months ago." With trembling hands, I opened the file. The opening lines were typical. Clara Mitchell, of sound mind, followed by names, property details, and then came the part one had been waiting for. "I bequeath my house, 407 Willow Creek Lane, to my granddaughter Emily Mitchell, provided that." I froze. "Provided that Emily, within 30 days of the execution of this will, gives written consent to the law firm that she accepts this inheritance and agrees to take responsibility for the property's upkeep." My mind went blank. I looked at the lawyer, and he spoke, the very line that shook my world. Asterisk, she didn't read the line that decides everything. Asterisk. I slammed the file shut and stood up from my chair. "You mean to say, if I didn't give that written consent in time, then Mr. Graham nodded gently. Then that clause becomes void, and the house transfers to Clara's next of kin, your mother. But Grandma didn't tell me any of this in the letter. My voice was now rising. Miss Mitchell, the lawyer's tone was calm. Clara wrote that letter herself, but it wasn't a legal document. She probably thought you would read the will and provide your consent on time. I was on the verge of collapsing on the floor. Was this my fault? Had my silence, my grief, cost me my inheritance? But the story didn't end there. Wait a minute, I suddenly said, this condition, are you absolutely sure I didn't send any written consent or form within the deadline? Mr. Graham turned to his computer and started searching. A moment later, he said, we have no record of any email or form, Emily, but yes, he paused. Yes, what? I almost screamed. We received an anonymous email 2 days ago with a scanned copy of that form, but it didn't have any signature on it. My heart began to race. Can I see that email? He showed me the screen. The email ID looked familiar, but I couldn't be sure. I checked the date, it was 2 days before the will's deadline. Has anyone traced this email? I asked. Our IT team said it was sent from a public IP, a cafe in New York City. New York. My mother was there. Had she deliberately sent this email under my name, without the signature, to create confusion about the will? Or had someone else, maybe my cousin, pulled this trick? I clenched my fists. Mr. Graham, I said with tears in my eyes, is there any way I can take this case to court? The lawyer stayed silent for a moment, then said, if you can prove that you were deliberately misled, or that your information was concealed, you can file a case based on fraud or malicious intent. But Emily, this won't be easy. You'll need evidence, and a lot of patience. I lowered my head. Grandma's smiling face flashed in my mind. No. I wasn't here to give up. I took a deep breath and said, prepare the case, this isn't just a fight for the house, it's a fight for my identity. After any major struggle, when you've lost your self-confidence, regaining it becomes the hardest task. But today, I had done that. This wasn't just a fight for my house, it was a fight for my identity, my freedom, and my soul. The court had reserved its judgment, and now I had to wait. But that wait only gave me more strength. I knew what I wanted, not what I was given, but what had been passed down to me by my grandmother. Her hopes, her love, and the power of her trust. That was the final day. My breath was almost caught in the courtroom. My lawyer, Mr. Graham, stood beside me. My family, the ones who had tried to take everything from me, sat in front. My mother's eyes were filled with fear, a fear she had never felt before. The judge spoke. This case is very serious, and I have studied all the facts deeply. Emily Mitchell has not only exposed the overlooked terms of the legal documents, but she has also proven that she was deceived and excluded from the process. Additionally, the emotional and mental distress Emily has suffered is also significant. All eyes were on me. My mother's face was pale, and my brother's face showed no emotion. But I no longer cared. What I had, no one could take from me now. In this case, the judge continued, I rule that Emily Mitchell be granted full rights to her grandmother's entire estate, specifically the house, 407 Willow Creek Lane. My senses were overwhelmed. Tears filled my eyes, but these tears were of victory, of the return of my self-respect. I could feel that this was not just a win for me, but for all those who had always known me and believed in me. My lawyer looked at me, and I thanked him. I did not bow my head to anyone, because this was my fight for my identity, and I had won it. Outside the courtroom. My steps were light, and I knew I would never fear losing anything again. The fight for my house was over, but now my voice had returned. My mother came to me, regret in her eyes, and quietly said, Emily, I understand. I was wrong. I looked at her and then smiled gently. Yes, you were wrong, but I don't need your apology now. I just had to keep my truth alive. The air in Seattle now felt cool on my face, but I knew this was only the coldness outside. Inside me, there was a new warmth, the warmth of self-confidence and freedom. Now I knew that I was not just the owner of a house, but the owner of my voice as well. This chapter of my life was now closed. But my real story was just beginning.